Granddad never mentioned that there were men as dark as this. Wow, look at that nose. He's just like a pig. He's a monster! Hut!
In today's episode, I'm joined by Michelle Worth, who a couple weeks ago posted a controversial photo on her Instagram page, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes. But first, I want to give you the opportunity, Michelle, to introduce yourself to the audience and explain who it is that you are.
Okay, hey guys, I'm Michelle. Last week I posted a photo of my mixed race baby and I, and it sparked quite a heated debate on various social media. But just a little bit about myself. I am an Indonesian Chinese, and I was born in Canada. I grew up in Jakarta and in Singapore, in a pretty multicultural community. I studied in LA, in London, in Milan, and I came back to Jakarta recently, where I started to actively date, and I met my husband, and we got married about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So, in an article that was on Next Shark recently, and in your post, you talked about having a white baby, and I'll read the quote before I ask my question. I always dreamed of having a blonde, blue-eyed baby, and people told me, who am I kidding? I'm Chinese through and through. Well, suck it, people. I have a white baby, complete with a set of blue eyes, too. My first question is, why you decide to post that photo on your Instagram page?
My family and my friends and I, we did a photo shoot in Bali a few months ago, and I got a little bit tanned, and we took a photo of my baby and I. And when I saw the photo, actually unedited, she looked so different to me. She looked so white. Like, she still had my features, but she was just very white, as in pale. I posted it with a caption. I could have actually just said, "Oh, I love my baby," blah blah blah. But take it with a pinch of salt. Like, it was meant to be a funny caption. It wasn't supposed to poke fun at any race. It wasn't supposed to insinuate any inferiority complex, and I definitely wasn't self-hating. And I'm really sorry if the people who misinterpreted it were offended, but I seriously don't find anything wrong with what I wrote.
Okay. Now, you briefly discussed the backlash you received on Next Shark in the article, but I'd like to know more. Like, tell me more about the backlash you received from people online and how that made you feel.
It came as a shock. Like, I don't even know how they found the post to begin with. Like someone said on the page, like, I only had 100 likes, so it's not supposed to appear on anyone's like timeline or whatever. So far, the people who commented were people who knew me and my friends, and it was a funny post, and people were actually laughing about it. And all of a sudden one day I just started getting all of these comments, and I thought it was just spam, so I just blocked it. And then a few hours later, someone actually commented on how the baby actually looks Asian. So I went back and I went to the Reddit link that was posted previously, and there's been a thread that has been going on for over 24 hours, pretty much saying that I stole the baby, that I hate myself, that, what's wrong with Asian women these days, going after white men, blah, blah, blah. It was just a bit much, that I actually had to take a step back. I was a bit taken aback. I wasn't prepared for any sort of backlash. I didn't mean to poke fun at anything. So I took a step back. I started reading it bit by bit, and then I started getting more comments on my photo, and I didn't want to be consumed by it, but I got a little bit taken aback. So
side note, like, Reddit and like the internet can find a way to look at posts even if you have it private, so that's just a warning, I guess, for the future. But yeah, I'll ask what may seem to be a crazy question, but I'll just bring it out there because it was kind of in the post. Do you want a white baby?
No, not really. I mean, okay, I do find white people beautiful. I find Indian people beautiful. I actually think black babies are really cute, but I would never be able to have a black baby. So I don't know. When I was a kid, I thought, oh, I want to have a white, blonde, blue-eyed baby. But, you know, it was just a sort of like shooting at the stars. Like it was never going to happen. I mean, I am Asian. If I were to have, I would definitely be half Asian. But then if you look at my baby, and I'll bring her out later after she's had her breakfast. She is very pale in complexion compared to me. I'm quite tanned. I'm not. I don't know if you can really see the video quality, but I'm quite tan. My husband's quite tanned as well for a Caucasian guy, and she's just really pale. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is like so weird.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I do, like I said before, I do find mixed babies really beautiful. But it doesn't mean that I was actively seeking out a Caucasian partner to have babies with. Like I didn't really make it my life goal. Like my life goal is centered around my career and my family. So I was accused of that as well. Like, oh my goodness, this woman like really spent all her life just to post this photo. It's a bit.
Yeah. But at the same time, like you've mentioned, like, you know, when you were a girl, you might have wanted to have a white baby and you couldn't have a black baby because you're Asian. But I mean, if you had a black partner, they would be darker skin, most likely. And if you're saying like maybe as a child you thought of having a white baby, that maybe, you know, there was some inkling that you wanted somebody that looked more Caucasian. You know, I mean, I don't know if that's what you meant in your response, but is that what you meant?
I mean, as a kid, I don't know. Like, I didn't understand anything about genetics. I didn't understand anything about racism. I don't know, when I first thought about it, it must have been 7 or 8. I was watching a lot of Sailor Moon, and the main character, Sailor Moon is a Japanese anime and manga, and the main character is blonde and has blue eyes, and the other characters have green eyes and purple hair and green hair, you know, and it was just sort of like a passing dream. And it was just something that I brought up in my caption just because, it just so happened that, yes, my baby is pretty pale. But like I said before, I do want to reiterate that it was never meant to be about race. It was just, you know, like I said, ooh, shit, it happened. Sorry.
It's fine. You can curse. This is not like broadcast television, but it's funny that you mentioned anime because, you know, there are signs of like white worship in anime. Like you mentioned Sailor Moon, the main character is supposed to be a Japanese schoolgirl, but she's blonde hair and blue eyed. Like that's not necessarily a coincidence if you're talking about a population in Japan that's all black hair and black eyed. You have various forms of anime. Like I don't know if you know about. There was this card game Yu-Gi-Oh! A decade ago where the dragon, Blue Eyes White Dragon, was more powerful than the black dragon, which was Red Eyes. And the main character was supposed to be an Egyptian pharaoh, but he was white-skinned until they went to his past, and he happened to have dark skin back then. And then there's, even now with Dragon Ball, there's the main character, his like evil component, Black Goku, is dark skin, and they've had another counterpart that was dark skin in Turles. And I'm just giving you iterations of like where white skin has been praised in Asia and black skin has been kind of demeaned. My point is, do you think that maybe, you know, you're as a child seeing, you know, blonde hair, blue eyes in anime or white skin in anime may have influenced your dating preferences as an adult?
Well, I don't know. That's a whole other subject to get into because I know I do know people who are Japanese and who are Japanese mixed race, you know, and I'm not just saying Japanese and Caucasian, for example. I'm saying like Japanese and Korean, and as you know, they've been treated as half caste all their lives, and I think the whole, you know, Caucasianness isn't exact. If you're dating a white guy in Japan, it's not exactly looked up on. Like it's actually really looked down upon. So, you know, there's even that term gaijin, which is almost like, you know, the Cantonese counterpart guailo or angmo, for example, which means white devil or white demon or white something. For the artists, for the anime artists to depict a lot of these people with lighter skin or darker skin, in my opinion, with different colored eyes, different colored hair, I really think it's just a visual thing. Like, there's also another thing where for thousands of years, even before Caucasians have made themselves apparent in Asia, like in Indonesia, for example, a lot of our masks, a lot of the masks that we use to tell myths and stories and legends, a lot of the faces are white, and a lot of the faces of the good guys are white, and the demons are black. But I think these have existed for longer than when like white man stepped foot into Indonesia, for example. It's just to depict a color, like I really don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but a color that is clean and a color that is dirty, for example, is purely, I think, just that. It has nothing to do with race. You can also see this in Asia over thousands of years ago, during the time of ancient Egyptians, for example, when the Chinese only knew the Chinese, the Asians, they depicted their deities or the good guys in their stories as being white and fair and pure and clean, for example, this clean look. I think it's purely a visual thing. I don't think a lot of people meant it to be a racial way, in a racist way.
Even if they didn't, I would say that it has effects on people's perceptions of race. Like,
yeah, that's also true. I think people can perceive it any way they want, but the meaning behind it, the meaning behind how the artist drew his, drew his pictures, like I think that should be taken into account.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a limit, like where it goes too far, I guess. I was in China, and last summer actually, and one of the people there took my photo, and they lightened my skin in an edit. I don't speak fluent Chinese, so I couldn't say anything, but it just happened. I mean, these perceptions have real life consequences for people, especially who have darker skin, and it makes them feel like they're being devalued. So there's a debate to say, look, it's just the culture, it's just the way that people were brought up. But there are many, I would say, just in my opinion, South Asians and Africans and dark-skinned Hispanics who would have something to say about it being more of a, having a racist undertone. Because like I mentioned before, you have white animes with characters who are white or with round eyes playing the protagonists, and then dark-skinned antagonists. So there is some argument to be made about how skin tone is perceived in Japan and the real life consequences it has on people who have darker skin. And I think that's just what I'm trying to point out, at least in this part of the interview, that we can say that it's harmless, we're not trying to really hurt anybody, but when we start viewing people who have darker skin as inferior, or we start constantly portraying them in various forms of media as antagonists all the time, and lighter skin as protagonists, that's where the consequences come in, and that's where it doesn't become like a culture debate, it becomes a racist debate. That's just my take on it. I don't know if I agree.
I totally agree. I was just stating, sort of like maybe a bit of the history behind it, and from the point of view of the artist, how it's received by the people who do watch the anime, for example. It's completely up to them as well. It's I don't know, I guess like when you watch a movie or when you watch a play or a cartoon, it really is a conversation between the person writing it and the person who's watching it. And you can read a piece of article or a book and interpret it your own way. I think everything just needs to be really taken into account as well. I mean, if there is let's say, a white guy who is making anime, and then all of the characters he portrays are blonde, blue-eyed, and all of the antagonists he portrays are darker skin, then okay, maybe there's a little bit going on there too, like because from where he is and what his background is. But in Asia, I know that racism is also very apparent, and yes, it is true that it has been embedded since colonial times, but a lot of these perspectives have existed even before that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a matter of perspective. I see more of the racial undertones in it because I know that there's a saying that, for people in Asia, white skin meant that you were like rich and were part of the noble class, if that's the right way to phrase noble, I think.
Yeah,
And
I heard
then,
about that.
yeah, dark skin was like you were on the farm and you were poor. So, I mean, I just don't want to diminish the racial aspect of it. There are people who do it harmless, and they're not trying to hurt anybody. They just like white skin. You can like white skin. You can like light skin. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's the racial undertones and the consequences that they may have in that are the problem, I guess. And there's an argument to be made about that, and that's my take on it. But I'll just move on to the next part of my questioning. Now, in your article, you mentioned that you say, for you, love is colorblind. You were a fangirl for Chris Pratt, who was white, and Aaron Kwok, who is Asian. Before you were married, were you open to dating men who weren't white, like Asian, Black, and Hispanic, or did you mostly stick to white men? What was that like?
My first boyfriend, actually, in middle school, he was Asian American, and just thinking about a relationship actually really takes it back to the time when like liking someone was just purely about liking someone. I dated a Filipino guy too. These were like, middle school romances, and obviously they last for like about a month, 2 months max. I dated a Chinese Medanese guy from Indonesia. That went for like about a year. We had the same taste in music. We both liked fashion and arts. I dated in high school Japanese Iranian guy. I dated a Scottish Indian guy. When I studied in Italy before I dated my the Caucasian Italian guy. I dated an African Italian guy as well. And yeah, they were all great romances, but just somehow it just never pulled through because I don't know, maybe we just didn't get along, or maybe because there's a language barrier, or I don't know, maybe he liked someone else, So my parents never actually had a problem with who I dated, except for this one time I actually dated this super goth white guy, and my parents were like, Michelle, you cannot date a man who wears more makeup than you. I mean, nothing wrong with that too, but I never had a problem. I was always open. Like for me, it was most important that we liked to travel, that he would respect my family values, having the whole tiger mom thing. I hope that he could get along with my mom, as I would like to get along with his family. And although I'm not a really religious person, it was most important that we have we're in the same spiritual wavelength. That was most important. That went above everything else. And then if you want to talk about physical features, then yeah, he had to be taller than me. Maybe I really didn't care if he was buff or not. I've always liked guys with tattoos, but I never dated any. I never got to date any, and yeah, I think that's about it. Like, yeah, he just had to be taller than me, and I don't know.
But you would you say there was a racial preference there, or maybe for white or Asian or not? Like, or it was just personality?
It's just personality. Like,
okay.
I love Chris Pratt. He's really funny. Aaron Kwok. I watched so many kung fu movies when I was younger with my grandparents, and I just found him on Instagram today, and he is aging very well. I love. I think Idris Elba is. He is as smoldery as young Harrison Ford, for example. Like, I see beyond the whole physical color exterior. Like, I see more like, oh God, he's got nice shoulders. Oh my goodness, he's got an amazing, smile, or he's funny. I think I see more into that than I do see into color.
Okay. moving on to a different like subject, and I'm going to bring some context into this, so give me a minute to explain it. There is a history of Asian women marrying white men, and like there being like senses of like either self-hate or like moving in like into power. So like you have Japanese women marrying white men after World War II, and the Japanese were bombed or nuked. And shortly after, some Japanese women came to America to marry white men. And there was a post even in modern times, like Shashway, who is a YouTuber, who's married to a white man. She's an Asian woman. She has had some posts that have been questionable. So there was an example where a white woman was wearing a kipao, which is a Chinese dress. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But in the controversy that was surrounding that, a white woman wearing this dress, she said the following. It's ridiculous that these chinks can get offended over a white chick wearing a qipao, not in a mocking manner, while one, complaining in English, and two, probably dressed in Western clothes, and three, while using a Western invention, the internet. The reason why I say all this is because I look back at your posts where it says, "Suck it, people, I have a white baby." And even if you didn't have like the intentions of portraying yourself as somebody that white worshipped or had self-hate, considering that there's all this background of Asian women marrying white men out of self-hate or marrying up, do you see how your posts may have contributed to that narrative in any way?
Yeah, okay, well, I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, then okay, maybe for me saying "suck it, people," maybe they really saw it as me looking down on them as a superior, Asian woman who married a white male. But obviously, I obviously didn't mean it that way. It was meant to be a funny thing, and for my friends, who we've had sort of running jokes about this as well. But yeah, okay, well, let's say it to a lot of people, to some people, the caption was something more than it is. I'm really sorry if that was misinterpreted that way. I don't actually, I know when you talk about Xia Sui, but I haven't actually seen I don't know many of her posts or captions, and I don't know what she's posted. I know with the likes of Tila Tequila, for example, who really make a point out of white supremacy.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee that what my caption meant has nothing to do with that. It's like so far apart from that. Like I really didn't mean it in that way. And I do condone women like that who belittle other races. Like I said, I grew up in a global community, and we were brought up to appreciate and celebrate every culture equally, and not, put one above the other. So I don't want to associate myself with those people. I don't want to associate my family and my daughter and expose them to that kind of thing as well. And I really didn't meant my caption to be taken in that sense. Like take it, I mean, like I said, take it with a pinch of salt. Like if you knew who I was, if you knew my sense of humor and my background, if you read it, you would say, oh gosh, shit, like, yeah, her baby's pretty white, man. Look at her. She's like, she's pretty Chinese, but her baby's white. It's supposed to be, a little bit more humorous than the serious, like, condoning tone that everyone perceives as.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I'm not calling you Tila Tequila. Like Tila Tequila is going out with the Hitler salute, like she's over the top with that. And I mean, in the case of Shashway, what I've noticed is that like she really shows off the fact that her baby is white, or her babies, I think, are white. And that's what I'm getting at, is that even if you didn't mean it that way, there is a narrative out there that Asian women do marry white men to have white babies and marry up. And I think, like, for example, if you had said something along the lines of, people said I wouldn't have an Asian baby because, like, I don't know, my husband doesn't look that Asian, well, suck it, I have an Asian baby. Or like, if you had a black husband and then they said, people thought I wouldn't have a dark-skinned baby, but suck it, I have a black baby now. Like, that's not as offensive because there's not as much of a, toxic narrative associated with having pride in having an Asian or a black baby compared to having a white baby. I think that's the reason why you receive so much criticism. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. And a lot of the people who did comment were, I don't want to put anyone in a box here, but like a lot of the people who did comment were mostly, I believe, Asian males. And you know, maybe some of them have actually had a relationship with like their dream wife, and she broke up with him to be with a Caucasian guy. And that really sucks. Like, I mean, I've been through heartbreaks as well, and I've been cheated on. I've been in an abusive relationship, and it really sucks to have that feeling when you're suffocating, you know. But there is no reason to take it out on people as well. Like, I've been through what I've been through. Yeah, I talk about it sometimes, but I don't want to dwell on it. Like, I kind of just want to move on with my life. So for a lot of these guys who are commenting, like, I'm really sorry if anything like that happened to you. I'm really sorry if you had an Asian mom and a white dad, and your Asian mom like hated you because you looked Asian. Like, some of them are actually calling me out saying, you know, your baby's gonna look really Asian when she's older. I hope you don't hate her. And I'm just thinking, like, dude, like, even if she was fat, or if she decides to like women or men and women, or gets piercings or gets tats and stuff, like, I'm still going to love my baby. Like, I pushed her out of my vagina. That was the most immense and painful feeling I had. I will never ever forget it, and I will love her for giving me that pain, for showing me that I can love something else other than myself.
And it's good to hear that. You know, that you love your child no matter what. I think that's what everybody wants their parents to do. Not to be too cliche, but again, like, I think just that there's. I mean, I've talked to some Asian men on my blog about this, and I see why. I'm not saying it's justified, but I see why a lot of them can get angry, because I do think that, and in myself included, have seen Asian women say that, you know, it's not you, it's me, or something like that, and then they just go off to date a white guy, and there's just a lot of like angst about that. So, you know, unfortunately, that's just the reality. But I'll move on to my final line of questioning. You mentioned that you were in Canada at one point. There is an article that was posted by a Asian girl that lived in Canada. She has a blog called Diary of Toronto Girl, and she talked about how Asian women are objectified by white men and fetishized by white men. But then she goes on to talk about how she fetishized white guys as well, and how she has a white boyfriend, and now they're, you know, living happily ever after. At least the article puts it that way. Do you think that Asian women may overall have a preference for white men? Have you seen that in your life?
Okay, well, there was once a time when the Asian women would be seen as like the victim of the old white balding men who are looking for like submissive women. Another time, both can be seen equally guilty of seeking each other. I don't have a voice. I don't want to voice out everyone's opinion, as most people's passionate about the subject, and they've probably read like every article on the internet already about it. But I do want to stick to my guns, though, when I say you cannot simply stereotype every white man and every Asian woman for being in a relationship. Like, granted, there are those who submit to the fetish and to the privilege, but there are also many who have their very own reasons why they choose to partner with whom. I mean, you can't look at every single one of the couples as an entity with like a hive mind, like, oh, you know, but everyone has their own reasons. Like, you know, it's, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, well, what do you think? Like, do you feel that like Asian women in general prefer like Caucasian guys?
Yeah.
I mean, from your part of it, because like I have lived in Canada till I was like about 5, so I didn't really get to experience all of that. And you know, in Southeast Asia, yeah, we do have some women who do go for Caucasian guys, mainly because of the whole colonialism thing. Like, a lot of them were probably brought up to believe that that foreigners, I'm not just saying Caucasian men I'm saying like foreigners in general, like they can come and give you a better life. And coming from and living in a third world country, I have seen like what people go through when it comes to education, food, jobs. Uh, um, it's we do. I mean, how do I say it? Like, if someone comes along and offers you like a better life, an opportunity for a better life somewhere, if you have been through what these people have been through, I think you're gonna take it. You know, and I think I don't want to say it's just for Caucasian guys and Asian women, but I think it's just in general. Like I know of women who are like this, who actively seek Caucasian men because they just have a really shit life here, and maybe they want to travel around the world more. Maybe they want to have a bit of money. I don't know. Maybe they do want to have mixed babies. Maybe they want their kids to speak better English, for example. It can be small things like that, but not everyone not everyone is seeking white men because of that reason, though.
Yeah, I don't think it's just limited to colonialism. I think you hit on another issue, which is that, some people, they live in poverty, and in my opinion, they see whiteness as a way out. That's been described by somebody who I've interviewed about this, who was an Asian man. Like, if you see white people always portrayed as good in the media, white people who are always at the top, particularly in America, white men, and you want to get out of poverty, or you want to have a better quality of life, you'd realize that your best bet of getting that is to be with a white guy. So I think that it's not necessarily okay, like I'm brainwashed to believe that white men are superior. It's just that my chances are better if my partner is white to get out of poverty, and my children will probably have a better life if they look more white rather than completely Asian or darker skinned. So I'm going to place my bets on dating a white guy. That's what I see, because it's not always necessarily rich white men that people are looking for in America. It's just like white men who are fat and in poverty. And I'm just like, what am I looking at? It's because the racial wealth that comes with being white is considered to be like a way to move up in some ways. At least over here. It's not really common to see Asian women dating black men, Hispanic men. There's still a lot that date Asian men, even with all the complaining that Asian men do, and I think it's justified to an extent. But definitely whiteness is seen as a step up, even if they don't necessarily have money. That's just how I see it.
I do see that as well. And if you want to say that the media has been brainwashing people, yeah, of course. Like, you watch movies like, I don't know, The Hangover, for example, and I forgot how many there are there, three or four guys. They're all the main characters.
Yeah.
All white, Caucasian, successful, funny, and then the antagonist is I forgot his name, but the small Asian white and the small Asian guy, for example. And I think it is true when the media, Western media, have emasculated the Asian man. But like I said before, it really is up to the people who watch it, how they want to perceive it and how they want to be impacted by it. It's just like bullying. Like, do you want to be consumed by it, or do you want to wake up the next day as a stronger person? I actually watch a lot of kung fu movies. I'm a huge fan of that. It's like my guilty pleasure. And I find there are a lot of really hot Asian guys out there. That are my type, tall, blah, blah, blah. But I think they should be given more credit when it comes to like Western media. Mm-hmm. They should be a bit more fair. It is true, because a lot of people are like, yeah, but you guys are the foreigners in our country, talking from the shoe of a white person in America, for example. But the Asian diaspora has been it's been happening for many years, that they are no longer a minority in the States, I think. Like, there are a lot of them there, so they should be equally celebrated.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, listen, you can prefer, not you, but like in general, Asian women can prefer to date white men. A racial preference isn't inherently racist. There's nothing wrong with preferring a race. It's just that when there's signs that there may be some, racism. Like if somebody says, I like white men because Asian men have a small penis. Like that's where people get mad, I think. I'm not, and you haven't done that, but that's when it starts to become more suspect, I would say. And that narrative needs to stop. I don't know the size of men's penises by their race. I don't care about that, and I'll never know that. But that's not something that any man wants to hear, regardless of their race.
Of course.
So, I mean, it's just important to be aware of when a preference becomes maybe suspect. But my last line of questioning, it's just two more questions. What do you have to say to non-white men, including Asian men, like directly, who were offended by your posts?
What can I say? I'm really, really sorry if you guys have been through, a really bad breakup caused by a white man. But I really think you should be the bigger person. I mean, if you want to show that you're invested in fighting for your cause, for your identity, the last thing you should do is bully someone. You can actually spend your time better and your energy actively seeking out and helping people instead of shooting them down.
Okay. And final question, what do you have to say to Asian women who marry white men because they hate being Asian?
Take a good look in the mirror, read a couple of books, watch a couple of movies, and you will actually be so proud of where you came from, whether or not you're Japanese or Vietnamese or Chinese or Indonesian. Like, our culture is very, very rich, and it is really, really thickly embedded in many different cultures around the world as well. When I was being bullied as well, I wasn't really bullied in school, but I have experienced a couple of sort of racist remarks, like you've read on my Next Shark article. But the only thing I could do is actually read more into my background and my culture. My culture being both Indonesian and Chinese. Like my great-grandparents were Indonesian-born Chinese. And that is itself like an amalgamation of Peranakan Chinese and Indonesian Chinese. I still do have family that are Muslim Indonesians. And there's a lot to be proud of. Like, there is not that many, I don't want to say anything bad about the Caucasian, Western culture, but there is so much going on in our culture for thousands of years already, that if you read up on it, you would generally be interested, and you would look at yourself in the mirror and be like, damn, I'm so fucking hot.
So just have some pride in yourself is what your advice would be, I guess. Yeah. Makes sense. Those were all my questions. You don't have to bring your white baby on here. I know you mentioned that, but if you have anything else that you want to add to this discussion, go ahead.
There's actually something that I wanted to add. There is, when we talk about preference, actually, back to that again, because I just wanted to get it off. There are people who do prefer different types of race for visual reasons, for physical reasons. But actually, there is a huge. There are actually people who are interested in other cultures. So, for example, there are white men who actually adopt his Asian partner's culture. In Indonesia, like most white men, actually have to convert into Islam when they want to marry Indonesian women. This is a law. And it is also something that the parents of the Indonesian woman want. So, I've dated a man who tried to deprive me of my roots, to deprive me of my culture, and that obviously didn't end well for him. There's also a cultural aspect that we have to sort of incorporate when we talk about preferences, because for example, I'm a huge, I love anything Japanese. I love anime. I love Japanese cuisine. Like I collect Japanese watercolors. I could, if anything, I could marry a Japanese man because I love his culture. I want to adopt it, but not by saying that I don't like my own culture, but because I respect it and I want to learn more about it. And I think there are people out there who, for example, some Caucasian men who have lived in let's say Indonesia for decades. Obviously, they're going to be marrying an Indonesian woman and not a Caucasian woman because why are they here otherwise? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like what you're saying is that look, there are some white men who do the work necessary to date Asian women, and it's not about colonialism or whatnot. And there are Asian women who seek to date within their own ways. I get all that. Listen, it's a gray area. Just because a white man's with an Asian woman doesn't mean it's automatically about self-hate or power dynamics or any of that. But when you combine the fact that Asian women have been complaining about white men objectifying them, but overwhelmingly go to white men in my country and in general, and you talk about how white men portray their own women as too radical, too feminist, and Asian women being more submissive, like there's just that discussion that has been long overdue that needs to be had. And I just don't want to deny the fact that there are white and Asian couples that can be non-toxic and can be great and can be based off of mutual interest and love. But there needs to be a conversation about the toxic mentality that both sides may have about this. Yeah. And that's what this is about, because it's a conversation that really has been, up until this point, one-sided in terms of Asian women pointing the finger at white men and saying that it's all them, when in reality it may be both sides, if not them, who are preferring white men themselves. That's the point of this.
Yeah. Actually, there was someone who actually commented like why I'm not married to an Asian guy. Actually, I have tried to. I mean, I'm in Indonesia. Like most of the guys that are in the market for me are Indonesian guys, Indonesian Chinese. But I never found a partner. Like I hope they find me attractive. But many don't actually find my personality too appealing to them. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm stubborn or radical, or maybe I'm just not physically attractive. Maybe I'm not petite enough. Maybe I'm too chubby. I don't know, So, this is for like the Asian guys out there who are asking why I don't date Asian guys. It's because maybe they just don't like me. And this boils down to just the whole personality thing as well. It doesn't always have to be like a racial thing. I tried to date an Asian guy here, actually, really well-to-do, rich family. They own a couple of restaurants and hotels, but it just didn't work out. Like I didn't want to marry into that.
Fair enough. Nothing wrong with marrying a white man. Nothing wrong with a white man marrying an Asian woman, but just being aware of any possible racist undertones that may be a part of that. Want to thank you for doing this. I know it's very tough to face the type of heat that you faced and to respond to it, but you have, and you've done it for my blog, which I thank you for very much.
Thank you so much.
Yes.